Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Fantasy Football Universe. I am Aaron St Denis. Follow me everywhere at FF Mad Scientist. Joined today by Jeremy Shulman at FF_Rebel, and we are here to talk messy wide receiving rooms. There's a bunch of them. I think this is going to end up being like a 12-part series, but for today, we'll cover a handful of teams. We're going to look at Texans, Packers, Bears, Bills, and Patriots. I guess we can start here with the Houston Texans. It's probably the most exciting of all the wide receiving rooms, but the problem is it's very messy. So we've got Nico Collins listed on Fantasy Pros. That's where our depth charts here are all powered by Fantasy Pros. If you go to fantasyfootballuniverse.com. The wide receiver one they have listed is Nico Collins. Was 15th last year, going as wide receiver 12 this year. Tank Dell up next, followed by Stephon Diggs, Noah Brown, Robert Woods, John Mechie, Xavier Hutchinson, Ben Skoranek, Steve Sims Jr., and Jackson Janke. So, for the most part, I guess it's really only Nico, Dell, and Diggs. That still is a whole lot of mouths to feed here. What are your thoughts? Where do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, I heard you and SC talking about this maybe about a week ago when you guys previewed the Texans. You can find this on our YouTube channel on our website. But the big takeaway for me is that Nico Collins is just priced too high for what I think is going to happen on this team. I think SC was saying that he prefers Dell because Stroud prefers Dell. And I prefer Dell because also Dell is the cheapest of the three in terms of ADP. So for me, it's probably the reverse order of ADP just because of cost, and it's Dell, Diggs, and then Nico. And simply because I think these guys are all going to eat into each other, and they're basically going to have the same stats, minus touchdown stats, which aren't sticky year to year anyway. But I think all of these guys are going to hover somewhere around 80 receptions, somewhere around 1,100 yards, and somewhere around 7 touchdowns. That might fluctuate, but these are the guys, we've seen Dell have monster games where he puts up 150 yards. We know Stephon Diggs can be an alpha. We know Nico broke out last year. I mean, Nico basically put up this stat line in 15 games last year, 80 receptions, pretty much 1,300 yards and 8 TDs. So all of these guys have that potential. And if Stroud continues to spread it around, I think they're all going to have similar stat lines. Yeah, you can bet on touchdowns, but, who's to say Dell can't keep up with those guys in the red zone either? So, I'm just going reverse order of ADP myself.
I think that's going to be the case for a lot of these. It's just going to be give me the cheapest. So I'm trying to bring some stuff up here. I think cost aside, I prefer Nico best out of the three. And sure. I prefer Diggs the least because he's the oldest. What is he now? I'm bringing it up. He is 30 already. Finished as the wide receiver 10 in half PPR. Hasn't been lower than 10 since 2019 when he was, he wasn't injured. I wonder why he had such a bad season there. But and then Tank Dell last year, like I said, was 38. He only played 11 games. He had that injury because he's small, and apparently they use small players to block. Not sure why. Nico Collins is the biggest guy for sure. I like Nico. I always thought he was undervalued. I don't love this situation. Let me take a quick look. So cost here. So we've got wide receiver 31, wide receiver 40, wide receiver 39. So for me, I normally want to go with whoever's the cheapest. One sec here. I know I'm trying to bring up the ECR on another page because like our right there has where they're going overall. But I'm looking on Fantasy Pros here, and they have. Okay, so Nico is going. What did I say there? Sorry, 12 overall, 12 wide receiver 12, but he's 27 overall.
So beginning around 3.
Yeah. Then we go all the way down to 45 for Diggs. Is Dell even lower? And then Dell is 56. So I was going to say, based on where they are in the receiving rankings, that they weren't too far apart. I would have just taken the player I like most, but you're right. It's significantly there's with all the players overall, it goes from Nico at 27, Diggs at 45, and then Tank Dell at 56. So I think based on that, it's a 30 pick difference here. I'm probably going to go with Tank Dell as well. Diggs is the guy in the middle where I like him the least, and his cost is the middle one. So I think for me, it would be Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and Stephon Diggs. I doubt I'm going to have many shares of Diggs. I have a couple of Nico where I was willing to pay up for him, but I think you're right. I think the target here is Dell. He's probably 1 or 2 for me on this depth chart, and he's the cheapest. So that's probably the winning combination for me.
Yeah, and just the last note on Dell, played 11 games, had that injury, but was hyper targeted. I know Nico had an injury too. He was out for a couple games. But something to consider is he only caught 47 balls over the course of the year, 709 yards. So he kept up with Nico in terms of the yards per reception. He had 15 yards per reception. So for a small guy, that's surprising. He also had 7 touchdowns to Nico's 8 and 4 fewer games. So just Stroud is always looking for this guy. And we know Tank has done really well after the catch. I don't think the leg injury, because it's a broken leg and not like a knee or something, is really going to affect him much. It's not a joint based injury. So I like Dell to bounce back, and I think he's going to be right up there. All these guys, like I said, they're going to be approaching 10 touchdowns, probably won't get there. They're going to be approaching 1,100, 1,200 yards. They're going to be approaching 80 receptions. So give me Dell. He's way cheaper.
Yeah, in the end, I think they all finished, like you said, with similar stat lines. So buy the cheapest. Next up, we've got an even more crowded wide receiving room here in Green Bay. Jaden Reed finished as wide receiver 19, going as 34. Then we have Christian Watson going as wide receiver 41, Romeo Doubs as wide receiver 53, Dontavian Wicks as wide receiver 66. And I've even seen some people talk about Bo Melton going as wide receiver 119. And then to bring up the rest of it here, we have Malik Heath and Samari Toure. I'm going to switch over here and try and find these. This is a lot of guys to find in Fantasy Pros. The issue here is I like Reed, but he's easily the most expensive. Watson, I like if I can get him the cheapest. I tend to like it. It seems to be, for me, the same as Houston. I'm either paying up for the guy I like the most or just give me who falls the lowest. I don't love Watson. The injury was there. I don't really like the sample size. Trying to scroll through here. There's so many damn players in this list. So we've got Jaden Reed's the first one. He's at 72 overall. The next one is Watson at 90, followed by wow, Dobbs all the way down at 134, and the rest of them are way out of it. So I think, like I said, for me, it's if I really have faith in Reed and I can afford it, I'm going to pay up for Reed, given the fact that there's not, it's 15, 20 pick difference here for Watson. If I don't want to, I'm going to just wait, and I'm going to take Romeo Doubs way, way later. But I don't think there's any chance I have of Watson here where he's much closer to Reed than Dobbs is, and I don't really want him. So once again, I'm either going to go with the high or the low.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, Jaden Reed, I think at cost is a little concerning. He's just a little bit high. I said this in some of the content in the fantasy minutes that I've been putting out on both Stroud, who we just talked about, and Love. I want the quarterbacks and not necessarily the receivers at cost. But here we're just choosing the receivers. So I don't mind Jaden Reed. I think he's got that volume role, just like we talked about Tank Dell. The problem is he is much more expensive than Dell is. I don't have a problem with a shot on Christian Watson, but you are getting a boom bust player. I prefer to be a bit more conservative in terms of wanting guys who have at least a floor. I don't think Watson has that. Like you said, it's crowded. I don't like Dobbs. I think Wicks can overtake him. I don't think that's a certainty as much as it's baked into his ADP. Wicks is going at like a ceiling here. So I don't want any of these other guys. So yeah, I think it's been just Jaden Reed for me. If he falls into a suitable range, but if we're talking about ADP 34, that's what the beginning of round 4. If my math is right, that seems a little bit rich for me on Jaden Reed. It depends who else is there. But I think I prefer someone like a JSN to a Jaden Reed, because I don't think there is a number 1 just in terms of number of targets here. So yeah, it's really a tricky one. Jaden Reed only started 13 games and had 94 targets last year, but Romeo Doubs had 96 targets, and those guys finished similarly. So it's tough. Jaden Reed kind of plays it closer to the line of scrimmage. So it's really just tricky here. I guess Jaden Reed, and that's probably about it for me.
Just looking at the two we've already talked about, and I know there's three more teams on the list, and they all seem to have a common theme for me. I don't really have a whole lot of any of them because the player I like most is by far the most expensive. I haven't wanted to pay up much for Reed. I
Sure.
haven't wanted to pay up for Nico. I've just taken safer players, the Pittmans in that range. And
Yeah.
then some of the cheaper guys I do have a couple of shares. I think of Dobbs or Watson where he fell. I've got a couple shares of Tank Dell where he fell. But for me, it's been a case of on these rosters, I'm simply taking the cheapest because I don't really want an expensive stake in this. You know, these are so unpredictable; they could play out in any way. So, if I don't mind taking a swing at these teams, but I want to do it as cheaply as possible. I don't want to be buying the highest one.
Yeah. And well, one more thing on the Packers as well. You don't have this
Yeah,
issue in Houston, right? Because you do have Joe Mixon, who has been a volume guy, but they tend to err more on the side of the pass. Green Bay has been incredibly efficient in the passing game, but we saw how they bolstered that running back room with both Josh Jacobs. They drafted Marshawn Lloyd. They brought back A.J. Dillon, who had a ridiculous 178 carries last year simply because he had to. He was next man up. So you have all those guys who are capable of carrying the load. I think they run it a lot more than Houston, and they have more mouths to feed, which really is the issue. It's just a volume problem there.
third team here on the list, and it's not getting any prettier. We have the Chicago Bears. The leader here is DJ Moore, finished as wide receiver 6, going as wide receiver 17, followed by Keenan Allen, finished 10th, going 25th. Roma Dunze going wide receiver 46, followed by a bunch of guys that aren't really worth much. We'll mention their names, but that's about it. Tyler Scott, DeAndre Carter, Velus Jones Jr., and Colin Johnson. I have a hard time with this one. I don't have a great amount of faith in any of them. This is one I've avoided entirely. I haven't. Maybe it's because I don't have a strong preference. I don't know who I think is the best. I don't know. I know Adunze is the cheapest, but I don't particularly love the rookie in this situation. So, like I said, this is the first out of the three where I don't believe I have a share of any of them, with the exception of maybe where DJ Moore fell 2 or 3 rounds later than I expected. I may have scooped him up, but even Keenan Allen, he's the guy where he's kind of like Calvin Ridley, Gabe Davis territory for me. Even if they fall 3 or 4 rounds later than their ADP, I just never end up with them. And Adunze, everyone gets all hot and bothered with the rookie. So I have no shares of him because he never falls. So I have minimal ownership here. How about you?
Yeah, I'm the same. I mean, it's really hard to argue with any of the points that you made. The only thing I'll say is DJ Moore, when he was basically alone, had 136 targets that last year from Justin Fields. So they were Justin Fields targets, not exactly something that you can expect to be excellent, and still ended up with 96 receptions, 1,364 yards, and 8 touchdowns. So we know DJ Moore is a talent. We've seen it his entire career. Roma Dunze is probably that talented, if not more. Keenan Allen was that talented. He's falling off. All these guys, this is like the Houston situation where you have 3 guys who have the talent level, which is basically the same. The problem is they don't have an incredible quarterback throwing to them, at least that we've seen happen in the NFL, right? You got another rookie coming in, and unless he's CJ Stroud from last year, he's not going to be able to support 2 of these guys, let alone all 3. So at ADP, you're kind of taking the bet on the one that you think is the best option here. I think it's got to be DJ Moore, but yeah, I'm scared at his cost. If his ADP is 17, that means you have to take him in the middle of the 2nd round. I'm not nearly comfortable with doing that with him. Keenan Allen looks like he's going top of the 3rd. No chance for me. And then Roma Dunze, I'm usually passing up. I prefer like a JSN. The last thing I'll say here is not only do we have a lot of unknown due to changing teams and the rookie and Adunze, DJ Moore with the new quarterback, but the quarterback is a rookie, and rookies typically only support one relevant pass catcher. At least we know it's not going to be the tight ends. It's probably going to be one of these guys, but who is it going to be? That's going to be tricky, especially with a new offensive coordinator who couldn't figure out a way in Seattle last year to utilize JSN properly. So I don't really know what's going to happen here. I'd bet on DJ Moore, but like you said, I don't really want any of them.
Yeah, well, and you brought up another good point there, and I discussed this yesterday on my Bears preview. I was saying there's a lot of new pieces here. We've got new coordinators, a rookie quarterback, a rookie receiver, a new running back, a new wide receiver. Teams with this many new pieces, I get the pieces look shiny and fancy, but they tend to take a lot more time to come together than this. And I think the Bears are going to struggle early on more than anyone wants to admit. So
Yeah.
that is partially the other reason. Like the Packers and Texans, they were teams where it's largely the same pieces as last year. This Bears team, it's a whole new team from top to bottom, with the exception of DJ Moore. And I don't necessarily know if they're going to come right out of the gate here firing on all cylinders. So, like I said, unless someone really falls in the draft for me, I don't really have any shares of these guys. Moving on, we got the Buffalo Bills next, as I get an ad on our own damn site. This is the least pretty of the ones we've done so far. We will start with what is listed as the wide receiver one, Curtis Samuel. Finished wide receiver 45 last year, 51 this year. Second up is rookie Keon Coleman, followed by Khalil Shakir, MVS, Mac Hollins, Chase Claypool, KJ Hamler, Justin Shorter, and Andy Isabella. I think for me, I don't have any shares of Khalil Shakir. He seems to be the hype name and he's going too high. I have some Curtis Samuel because nobody wants him because he's old. MVS I have once or twice as a last round throw in a deeper format. The one I've been getting where available, Keon Coleman seems to fall, and I love to take a shot on as many of these the rookie receivers as possible.
Yep.
He could very well be a bust. He could also be the stud. But the key I find with Coleman is with these rookies, don't do the Justin Jefferson rookie year and give up on him after 3 or 4 weeks. If you're going to draft someone like Coleman, you've got to be patient. You've got to be willing to eat him for a half a season and just, that's why he's an easier player to tolerate in Dynasty, because you're not going to cut him. In redraft, you really got to be patient here because, we've seen with Justin Jefferson, like I said, you cut him after week 4, and then he goes on to have one of the greatest rookie seasons we've ever seen, and you've already cut him. So that's where I'm kind of at. I think like I said, I'm avoiding Shakir, targeting Samuel and MVS late. MVS, it's not exactly targeting. It's a late round. What the hell? Keon Coleman would be my prime target here. Wasn't in love with the talent, but I love the rookies. He's going late enough. He's never the rookie like a Dunze, where a Dunze seems to go earlier than expected. Coleman seems to go later, so I have some shares of him. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't mind that call at all. You want the unknown as long as it's not too pricey, right? Keon Coleman could easily be the one in this offense. They drafted him to be that. Is he that? I don't particularly think so, but it's certainly possible. Why not take the shot if he's going in like the 7th, 8th round? I have no issue with that. We all expect Dalton Kincaid to step up because by far the 3 biggest target earners last year were Stephon Diggs, Kincaid second with 91, and Gabe Davis third. Diggs and Davis are out of town, as we've already talked about. It's just Kincaid. But, there could be a lot of other things that happen here. James Cook, as they've already discussed in Buffalo, could be getting more of a share of the target volume. Dalton, is it Dalton Knox? What is Knox's name?
Dawson.
Dawson. Thank you.
Darwin.
Dawson Knox could be a lot more involved than we really want or expect. So it's really hard to figure out just exactly who it's going to be. For me, I like the idea of Curtis Samuel. We've seen him do it before. He's familiar with this offense, and he's close to the line of scrimmage. We're not really going to have those big ADOTs that Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs were able to give us, because you mentioned MVS here. MVS can't catch the football. He's proven that throughout his entire career. So he might be open down the field. They might give him a few shots to stretch the defense, but he can't catch the football. Mac Hollins is probably a better deep threat at this point. Chase Claypool might be a better deep threat than Marquez Valdez-Scantling. But yeah, I can't bank on any of those guys. I'll take Curtis Samuel in the hopes that he's better than Khalil Shakir, which I think he is. And that he kind of has that short to intermediate role. They use him on screens. They use him on crossers, and he's able to just use that yak and be a serviceable wide receiver 3 for my team.
I agree 100%. Like I said, this is not the greatest looking roster here. It makes me really want to target James Cook here. There's not a lot. I don't love this roster. It's pretty ugly. It also, like I said, I wanted a lot of Dalton Kincaid, or what did you call him? Dalton
No, Darwin Knox is what
Darwin Knox.
I
Thank
wanted.
you, Darwin Knox. Thank you. I wanted lots of him, but he's going far too early for me to
Yeah,
really turn a profit. Dawson Knox is a decent target as well because he's still getting the big contract.
yeah, it's true.
We will move on to our fifth and final team. Not much sexier here. The New England Patriots.
Yuck.
That would be, yep. Wide receiver 1 listed as Demario Douglas, finished as wide receiver 75, going as 74. Next up, Jalen Polk, the rookie. The other rookie, Javon Baker, followed by Kendrick Bourne, KJ Osborne, Juju Smith Schuster, Tyquan Thornton, Keyshawn Boutte, and Jalen Rager. There are some names here, but it seems like there are 9 guys to talk about here. I couldn't tell you which one is most likely to hit. I've avoided pretty much everyone except for the top 3, obviously, in Douglas, Polk, and Baker. I'd take all 3 of them, like in a Scott Fishbowl format, where I'm just taking late dart throws. I know at one point I think you were the one who said you were looking at Polk, maybe. I couldn't tell you though. Like, I like the way Douglas played last year. Polk, Baker, I couldn't tell you who's more likely to hit here. This one is I'm going to try and diversify across leagues and hope I get a couple of shares of whoever the hit is here, because they all seem equally as likely to just be uninteresting wide receiver 3s. What do you think?
Yeah, I think wide receiver 3 is generous. We know that Drake May is going to probably target someone, but who is that someone? I don't know. I'll tell you who it isn't going to be. It's going to be the number 2 target from this team last year. Any idea who that was?
No. Ramondre Stevenson?
Ezekiel, good guess. Ezekiel Elliott, because Ramondre Stevenson was hurt too often. Zeke had 65 targets on this team, and that was good enough for second. So Pop far and away the first. The interesting thing about Douglas is that he only started 7 games, and he ended up with 79 targets. So, he's playing a lot from the slot and 3 wide receiver sets when they need him. But as good as we thought he did, he only had 49 receptions for 561 yards and 0 touchdowns last season. Yeah, the QB play was abysmal. I'm not sure that a rookie Drake May is going to be that much of a difference maker in terms of passing the football than Mac Jones was last year, especially absent Bill Belichick. So I don't have high hopes for the passing game this year. The Patriots are moving in the right direction, but yeah, I'm not investing in anyone at cost. One thing I will say is if he's healthy, Kendrick Bourne played 8 games last year, ended up 4th on the team for the season in targets. And he had 37 receptions and 4 touchdowns in just half a season of games. Everyone else played at least 2/3. So Bourne is really interesting. Now, if he can rehab, continue to kind of earn those level of targets, that's interesting to me, basically because he's cheap. But Jalen Polk is the other guy here where you're just kind of betting on upside. Maybe the rookie gels with May. But like you said, I mean, I don't want any of these guys.
Yeah, I don't even know how else to sum it up. I late shots on some of them, like they're decent dart throws, but if you told me that Douglas, like every single player on this team, if you told me that they're all dropped on my fantasy team by week 2, I wouldn't argue with you. So
yeah,
it's definitely not the sexiest team, that's for damn sure. Any other notes here on the Patriots before we call it a day?
No, just to say that, yeah, we weren't really that helpful with these wide receiver rooms. Just don't take any of them, basically.
Yeah.
Get Dell, get Curtis Samuel, and then don't take any other wide receivers, I guess.
Get the cheap one, basically. Get the cheap one, get whoever falls, avoid. Don't put yourself in a situation like this one here, unless they're free. Douglas, Polk, Baker, I want nothing to do with it. The Bills, similar situation. I'm willing to pay up a little more for Keon Coleman. The Bears, I'm avoiding almost entirely just because they're just as unsure, but everyone seems to be buying the hype. So the cost is up there. And then the Packers and Texans, I think we both agreed that it was kind of just buy the cheapest one and hope you got lucky there. These are really messy. This is why I love teams like the Lions where there's 4 good fantasy players and you don't care about anyone else. So
very true.
All right, check back. I don't know. Are you guys gonna go live later, or are you guys gonna do tomorrow
We'll
for
do it.
part 2 of this?
We'll do it later.
All right, Jeremy and Jesse will be back later on with part 2. I think they're looking at Broncos, Chargers, Jaguars, Titans, and Giants. And there will be a part 3 we're still working on. There's a lot of these crappy wide receiver rooms. The teams with one CD Lamb are very rare. There's a lot more of these ugly rosters. So check back later to see Jesse and Jeremy break down the next set of receiving cores. Take care, everyone. Thank you for watching.